Hey guys, I want to show you how we do bluestone natural cleft patio work. This is a lower portion we've just finished. We're still working up top. This has been sealed with a wet look natural sealer, and it has the G2 gator dust in the joints. And it really has a nice look, and it weathers really well. But there's a lot of tricks to setting it up so that everything stays on plane, so that the water drains off of it, so that it looks good. And I want to run you through, we've got the thing in process up here, and I want to run you through how we lay it out, how we set it up. This area here has a lot of pitches and grades going on, and we also have a lot of water coming off of the roofs, and we don't want to make a puddle here. We don't want to make the water ripping off so fast, and we want to make all the points finish well. So before we started anything with this, we figured out our 6.5-inch steps off from the house. So it's 13 inches from top to bottom there. We figured out where our pitches and our roof drains were going to be. Also, you never want to, if you can avoid it, you never want to run your patio dead even with a threshold. Even if you have it pitched away an inch or so, in the summer that works great, the water runs away. If you have snow coming off this roof and then water damming up, then it starts dripping behind that snow dam, you get water inside a building. So we always stay low here. Also, we had a step there, and we have a driveway over there. We want the driveway water to stay where it is. You don't want salted, especially in the winter, salted water off the driveway coming onto your patio. That can wreak havoc with everything. So we figured out all those points. That's what these strings represent. We know we're high and proud of the patio. We've got our 13 inches. We've got our step down. And we pulled these strings. Below here, we excavated out about 8 inches. Put about 6.5 inches of compacted shoulder stone. That's a mixture of gravel. There's a little bit right there. It's a gravel and sand mixture. And we compact that down. That goes down almost like concrete once that thing is fully flattened. But we wanted that in the right areas. We pulled these strings first and screeded basically like concrete the surface of that sub base. Then we brought in this stone dust, which is a very fine crushed fine stone. Like sand, but even has particles in it that are finer than sand, which compacts even further. We put an inch of that down and compacted that. Then we pulled our strings again and we screeded off the final inch to make sure we were very close to our dimensions. Then we set these strings up again, and you'll see we have these little islands here. These are stones that are set on plane as we go that show all these pitches. We wanted those roofs to catch, to drain a little bit away from the sides, because you don't want water holding up against the sides, and then run out. And the lowest point is this corner back here, so the water would run away. So we've set these little island pieces. This island piece here was set on a string line, and then we use a range rod of some sort. This is a square stock, aluminum square stock, or that 12-foot level over there. Works as a great range rod to keep things on plane. Every time I set a stone, I make sure it orients properly to that pitch. So I'm going to set one here to show you the process. I really like a regular concrete finish trowel. They fit real well and they allow you to angle your base. So I kind of work the sand just kind of by eye. These things vary in thickness. That's the challenge between these and just a patio block. There's a lot more time in getting these on a perfect flat plane because you have to adjust for every stone. So I eyeball the thickness of the stone. Either add a little bit of sand or rake out a little bit of sand. Before you finish, or as you finish setting the base, we always leave a pile of sand to work with outside of the patio area and bring it in with a wheelbarrow if we have to adjust plus a little bit or minus a little bit. So we set the stone in that rough area. Then I put this range piece on, and I see I'm a little bit low on the front. That's only 1/4 of an inch or so. It seems, oh, that's fine. If you do that twice, all of a sudden you're 1/2 inch. And 1/2 inch is enough to get a puddle of water going. So I put it on there. I see I've got 1/4 of an inch. I lift up. I noticed I was a little bit high against this neighbor. So I steal about 1/8 of an inch of sand there. I add about 1/4 inch here. Flatten it out. If there's a big dip or a dive, I actually adjust for that too. In the bottom. Set it again. These stones are, like, this is considered an 18 by 18 inch stone, but it's actually 17.5 inch. So they've cut them short to allow for a 1/2 inch mortar joint. Set that again. Take a look at it. There it is. I'm pretty much touching both ways. Check to make sure. Now this one you'll see I'm far from touching right now in this middle line, but that's how I set it, so that these two sides were higher. Water would come toward the middle and run away. But I'm pretty friendly with my neighbors. I've got no toe catchers, and everything's ranging toward this center piece. The rubber mallet is a key. If you have a high spot, if you want to make sure you're truly settled, that's what we do. To adjust it, looks like I actually got to set it just a little bit better. And then the process continues. Once you've gotten it this far, I'll show you in another clip, we're going to fill the joints with stone dust and water. Pack them in, bind it. If there's any voids, that water is going to run the stone dust underneath so that we know we have a solid base. Then we're going to vacuum the stone dust out in the joints themselves and refill with gator dust. That'll be the next stage. Alright, so we have set this patio. Our backs hurt. We've been at it a couple days. The next stage, before we just zoom right into gator dust in the joints, is to tune the whole patio and look for any wiggly stones. It's way better to find them now than later. What I've already done on this, I took the hose nozzle right off and I let this hose just run for about 15 minutes all over the place. Saturated things, worked the stone dust. You know there's got to be voids in some places underneath the stones, as much as we tried to keep it even. And by saturating like this, we're pushing that stone dust into the joints. And I pretty much rock tested every single stone to see if I had any wiggle in it. And while I was looking at it with all that intensity, I got a flat bar handy to do some fine tuning on the joints to keep them spaced evenly. You want that roughly 1/2 inch spacing in order to get a good gator dust joint going in there. And this is another thing, easy to do now, so much harder to do later. Usually I have a few stones, just round stones with me, and if I find a wiggler, I put a round stone on it and then I come back and fix it. The reason this one's wiggling is probably partly because it wasn't set perfectly, and partly because when I had all that water running, it may have run some water and run some dust out from underneath it. But again, I'd much rather find that out now than later. So I lift it up. I find that it's got a few low spots. I'm gonna work those in. Sometimes I'll set that with the hose again. The hose, that saturated stone dust, is like concrete. It's more likely to ooze around and get where you need it to go. So the hose is kind of your friend, particularly at this juncture. Also, I will take a slurry of dust and I will work it. If I see I've got a void, I will sometimes, instead of picking up the whole stone, I'll work that dust right into the joint and let it flow underneath. It wasn't a rocker, but I could tell I had something going on. Then we can do a little bit of compacting here. I mean, in the directions it'll tell you, put a plate compactor with a rubber face on it and plate compact. With a bluestone, boy, the likelihood of you breaking 3, 4, 5, 6 rocks when you run that plate compactor over is high. So we kind of have to do a little bit more of a labor-intensive thing here to get it nice and settled as if we'd run a plate compactor over it. And we're going to do that again when we gator dust it. We're going to vibrate it basically with a rubber hammer to get it worked down. The other thing to have in mind is I got 3 different roofs dropping on this. This is going to have a fair amount of water on it and a fair amount of water to run off. The whole thing's pitched to run off that way, but I know some water is going to escape out these ends. And as great a product as gator dust is, it's not going to last when you got rivers running out the run out ends. So I want to show you what we did at the other end and what we always do on a place where you can see a run out. Kind of had the same thing going on here. I know I'm going to have, this is pitched downhill anyways, I know I'm going to have a bunch of water coming out here. So we put mortar in a pastry bag, squeezed, this is real regular mortar, squeezed the mortar in and then tooled that joint just so it doesn't show. It shows on the end, but it'll look like gator dust right to the top, and it's going to just give us that added strength and protection. So we'll do those fine-tuning joints there, and then if you look at the bag of gator dust, it says you cannot have more. You have to have your gator dust equal to the bottom of the bluestone. So if you had 2 bluestones, you can't have half that height filled with stone dust and then half the height with gator dust. It's got to be pure gator dust from top to bottom. We're far from that here. So what we're going to do, and this is labor intensive and tedious, but this is going to make for a really good patio that's going to last for a long time. We're going to run the shop back and take a tool, usually a good little pointing trowel or something, to loosen up those joints, and we're going to vacuum those joints out so that they're even. We've done this after we've tuned everything and settled everything. Then we're going to vacuum it all even, then we're going to clean this thing as much as we can and let it dry. If we can let it dry for a full day, it's much better. We don't want moisture around those, even around the edges when we're doing the sealer or the gator dust. Okay, now we're up to the sealing stage. There's a couple things. We have cleaned this thing as much as we possibly could. We used a broom, we used a hose, we used an air blower. We've got all the dust off. Any of the scummy dust that was within the rock itself, we scrubbed off. Super clean. It was super wet yesterday. Today it was low humidity, kind of breezy all day and sunny. It's a Saturday and we're here anyways because it's that important that you seal this when it's dry. Not just the top dry, but the moisture having wicked out and really dried out of the sides too. The top will dry, you know, the sun hits it, the top will dry in 20 minutes. But getting those edges dry takes more time. If you don't do that, there's actually a moisture ring that's wicked into the sides. I've learned this the hard way. If that moisture is there and you put the sealer on, the sealer hits the moisture, reverses, and it never seals. And worse yet, it leaves this weird gray hazy halo around your really nice stones. So super dry, super important. Now we have there's a couple methods. I think the best thing to do is a combination of a garden sprayer lightly, because there's still a fair amount of topography on these stones. It's hard to do a good job with just a roller. So we take a garden sprayer, do a small area, and then back roll it with the roller. And meanwhile in my pocket I keep a little brush just in case there's another little spot. So, and I'm trying not to just like go nuts and dump it down the edges, because I want the gator dust joint material to seal in the edges. This, by the way, is a high gloss water-based stone sealer by Gator Dust. I'll give you all the details. All the parts and pieces will be in the line below the video here. But that's what we're doing. We don't want to leave any puddles of that sealer, any drips or anything. We're kind of trying to blend them all out. I'm going to take that brush and kind of cut in those edges and do a nice, even, light surface all across these stones. without going nuts and getting in the edges. But most important is make sure it's crazy dry before you do it. So these little throwaway brushes are great for cutting in around the edges. One other thing I did not mention is that says on the container, you need the stone to be cool to the touch. I know in order to get high, get dry and everything, it creates kind of a Goldilocks condition for this stone, but it's important to shade it or whatever, or wait till evening. Right now it's about 6 o'clock in the evening when the stone is actually cool to touch, or you'll fry the sealer before it gets to cure. There's other types of sealers too. You can get this is a kind of a wet look high gloss. You can get a natural look, which goes down with the sprayer. Just get it wet, and it seals it. Looks just like nothing was on it, just as natural as could be. But when you drop water droplets on, it sits right up like water on a duck's back. So that's another option. But this high gloss does bring the colors out, pops the colors out, and it gives you another little advantage for getting the sealer, the gator dust down without any of the dust catching. So that's the last little bit on sealing. Okay, this stage is the critical one. If you fast forward through this video and get to this moment, this is the make it or break it part of the patio. We have spent about a week or so of hard labor getting this as nice as we can, as flat as we can, as clean as we can, sealing it. But you can get this gator dust in, have it seal, and it'll last. It says a 15-year guarantee. I've done some of this that lasted 10 years already, and it's still perfect the way I left it. And I've screwed it up, and it never cured the day I left it, and I've had to pull it all out and redo it. So following these directions are probably the most important part. I don't want you to ruin your patio. We want it to turn out really sharp. So part of the reason you saw before we sealed this 2 nights ago on a nice dry evening is because the sealer stops some of the haze and the stickiness of the gator dust onto the surface. That's what we're really trying to avoid, is getting this stuff. There's a binder. It's a sand with a polymer binder. It says it's an intelligent polymer binder. I have no idea how you assess the IQ of a polymer or even what a polymer is, but it says it's an intelligent polymer binder. It knows when to get cured and when to handle, and if everything's right, it doesn't quite harden as hard as mortar. It kind of is like a soft hard that when it gets wet it'll reshape, which is perfect on a patio like this that's not on a frost protected surface. If it moves, it still stays sealed. But with that comes a lot of risk. So we sealed the surface of the stones themselves. We have waited. We have another perfect, beautiful bluebird day. Tomorrow is supposed to be dry too. It's been very dry all day. We not only have a dry surface, but we have dry, raw edges. That's something I've screwed up in the past. This looked good. That was a little dark, but I pushed it anyways. And that'll cause some of the polymers to start catching on that, and it won't settle right, it won't cure right. So super dry day, good weather conditions coming up. Then you can, this is G2, generation 2 of gator dust. Generation 1 was called low haze. This is called no haze. I had generation 1 put haze all over, beautiful colored patios, put the G1 generation 1 gator dust on it, and it just basically ruined it. You couldn't get that light cloudy color off of it. After a while I ended up using that G1 product, applying it with a pastry bag into just the joint so it never got on the surface, because if you got it in there it did a great job, but getting it in there was a challenge. So the G2 on a sealed surface does seem to do as advertised. You can basically dump it on when everything's crazy dry, sweep it in, and I like to sweep it from a couple directions, really get it work. And then on the bag it says get a gas tamper and tamp it. A lot of these products are made to be used on precast pavers, which are thicker and are not a natural product. They can handle more abuse. These, if you put a tamper across this, you'd probably break a bunch of stones. Everyone would cry. It would be very sad. So we're not going to do that. But the reason they're asking you to tamp it, where's my rubber mallet?
Behind your bag of gator dust.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. The reason they're asking you to tamp it is because they want you to vibrate that dust down so it's condensed and compacted, which the only way to do this is with a rubber mallet. You'll see in this whole video, we kind of have to do it the slow way in almost all these stages. That's because we're working with a natural product, and those natural products like this bluestone with various thicknesses and all the crags and everything, with that natural product comes some extra labor processes. But what you get, that finished product you get, is a custom, beautiful, as God made it kind of a stone scape that you can't match anywhere else. So, that's my soapbox, but here's the process. We're going to go around like crazy. We'll usually have 2 or 3 of us just running around with rubber hammers, thumping on all the corners. When we see, you'll see it settling, that's what we want to see. Then we'll take the broom and we'll work it over again. They say what you want, when you're finished, you want to have a slight bevel. It should be a little bit low in the joints compared to the stones. Don't worry about getting that with the broom. You'll get that when you blow it with the air leaf blower. So I'm going to just do a little segment here. It also says no blower necessary with the G2 product. But if you watch their video, they use a blower. So some of that, they might just be blowing something else. This is not the most awesome blower you've ever seen. It came out of my grandmother's garage. But it is actually the most awesome blower because it has a control here. You don't need massive power. If you do massive power, you're going to blow a bunch of dust out of the joints. I set this at about half power. Just did a little section there, but you see I wasn't blowing down. I'm riding that. Eventually I'm going to rub the bottom of this right off. I'm riding it right on the patio and I'm kind of blowing up. I'm blowing a lot of that haze material right clean off. When I'm done, it's not as pretty as it was just before I put this dust down. There's still a little bit of a haze, but you can settle your heart. It'll go away when we do the watering phase. That will clean off, and it does turn out. So that's this process. Water's coming up next. Alright, we're tired, but we've made it to the last stage. We blasted this all off of the air. Then, if there's places where the air dips in and dives and pulls a little extra, we go back by hand and feather in the last bit. So we've got this as clean as it can be with even gator dust as possible. Now it's moistening it. So it says on the bag, 50 square feet at a time. Start at the lowest point, do 50 square feet at a time on a rinse mode for 1 minute, or a rain mode for 1 minute. The only change I do on that is we start that 50 square feet on a very light mist mode because we want to actually just barely moisten the top with that light mist, and it'll stop the drips, the heavy drips, from pounding the gator dust out of the joints. So we're going to start with this super light mist on about 50 square feet. And then we'll switch it up to the rain mode. If this video was helpful to you, please like and subscribe. Alright, now we're going to switch over to the rain mode. 60 seconds on 50 square feet. That's you don't want to get it too wet and you don't want it to be too dry. So that was about 30. Assume that was 60 seconds. And we repeat that process section by section, misting it lightly in 50 square foot sections, and then 30 seconds all the way around. That thing might kill me. Thank you very much for watching. There is details of the products we used in the link below. Please like and subscribe. Share this with people. If you have a nearby lumberyard or masonry hardscape supplier, tell them about this, and good luck. If you have any questions, please put that in the comment line below. I'll do my best to keep up with those. And if you have any other ideas or ways that you've improved on this, please throw that down as well. I'd love to learn and share. Thank you much.